What's going on, everyone? And finally, welcome to the super secret third channel. We're here today on Jake Talks Capes. This is a channel where we're going to talk about movies, about comic books, about superheroes, about TV shows, about Marvel, about DC, about fucking Image Comics, about everything that's fun and nerdy and weird. That's what we're going to talk about here. And today we're starting off with, as you can see by the title, my casting for the Fantastic Four villains. As you can see over there, there's the boys. There they are. This isn't the video I originally planned to begin this channel with. I spent a lot more time thinking about the X-Men and the X-Men villains and the giant-sized X-Men. I have some X-Men videos in the pipeline. However, very recently, it was announced that Julia Garner is going to be playing Shalla Bal in the Fantastic Four movie. She is, of course, the female Silver Surfer. Everyone got mad about that, didn't they? And after that was announced, I kind of realised it was time to sort of rush, not necessarily rush this video, but move it up the slate, make this the first video, because I don't want to wait another couple of weeks, and then I'm in the middle of being like, oh, who's the perfect fucking so-and-so? And then, boom, we have a Doctor Doom announcement, and then this video's fucked. Truthfully. It's not all A-listers, it's not all heavy hitters here, mainly because the Fantastic Four have already been cast, and we have a casting announcement for at least one Silver Surfer. There are some rumours that we might be getting Norrin Radd, the sort of traditional male Silver Surfer. So let's just go. Let's just talk about some Fantastic Four villains and who this big stupid idiot thinks should play them. Of course, if you have been living under a rock, back on Valentine's Day of this year, Marvel announced their lineup for Marvel's First Family. Look at them, they're over my shoulder there with that wonderful sort of vintage 60s highly stylized promo press shot with all of them in these sort of wonderful, amazing, there's no Marvel lines all over them, costumes. So they are, if you're unaware, Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, is being portrayed by Pedro Pascal. Sue Storm is being portrayed by Vanessa Kirby, who I have been shouting about to be Sue Storm since 2021. So give me my flowers, babe. I know what I'm talking about in this fan casting nonsense. Sue's younger brother then, Johnny Storm, also known as the Human Torch, is being played by Stranger Things' Joseph Quinn. I don't know how much I love that. Mainly because I think I'd attached myself to Dacre Montgomery ever since I watched Power Rangers 2017. And then even more after he was in Stranger Things. But I'm sure they've cast Joseph Quinn for a good reason. He's a young, up-and-coming actor. And I did see someone point out, when he's got his little quiff there in that photo, whether they're going to be set in the 60s, he's, what was the tweet? It says something along the lines of, Joseph Quinn is as hot as people were allowed to be in the 60s. So that makes sense. And then finally, Ben Grimm, the Thing, is being portrayed finally by a Jewish actor, which I'm very, very happy about, very, very pleased about. He is being portrayed by Ebon Moss-Backrack of The Bear. 4 good to great castings. I'm definitely much more excited about the casting of Vanessa Kirby and Ebon Moss-Backrack than I am with Pedro Pascal and Joseph Quinn. Those are things we'll talk about in the next few videos, I would imagine. I can finally talk about news that happened 3 months ago. but we move. So, who better to start this video with than Mole Man, the first ever Fantastic Four villain. His first appearance coming all the way back in 1961 in Fantastic Four #1. So Harvey Elder is a man who was ridiculed. He was born on the surface and ridiculed throughout his life for his sort of odd appearance. He grew up, became a scientist, but even still struggled to find acceptance with his peers due to his appearance. He was mocked relentlessly throughout his life and eventually quit his job and began this search for an underground civilization, underground world at the centre of the earth. He tried to join a guild of explorers who turned him back, knocked him back, but eventually found it. I think he maybe followed them to an island or something. I'm not overly sure. There's one thing you're going to see on this channel. I know nowhere near as much about comics as your Nando V movies or your Troy Boy 017s, but I know enough to talk my shit. So I'm going to talk my shit. Anyway, he finds a tunnel, an entrance to this underground civilization, cheers and does a big Homer Simpson woohoo, causes like an avalanche or a rock slide, falls down the tunnel into the Valley of Diamonds. There's just a million diamonds underground for reasons. He's then blinded by the glare of them and then sort of wanders around almost entirely blind discovers a race of subterranean people called Moloids and dormant deviant technology. He crowns himself the king of this underground world, which he then calls Subterranea. Uses this technology and the Moloids, and presumably also the diamonds. I don't know why that's there if you've never used them. Maybe that powers the technology. I've not read all these old Fantastic Four comics. And eventually, with his use of the technology and his scientific acumen and his brains, he leads the Moloids on a charge to take over the surface world. That's it. He's a weird underground man, living underground, who wants to take over the surface. So what do I want to see in my Mole Man? There's not much here. I want weird little guys. I want a weird little guy. That's it. So, who better than the king of the weird little guys, Danny DeVito? He even kind of looks like Mole Man a little bit. If not Danny DeVito, why not his sonny running mate, Charlie Day? Another Hall of Fame weird little guy. My biggest issue with these two is I think they come off a little bit too comedic, and I think that could be fun in a 60s sort of environment, but with the announcement of Shalla Bal, that means we're probably not going to get a little fun, like sort of ground level story at first, which I'm not massive about. A sort of fun 60s set story. I mean, we still have to see what's going to happen. I do think, though, my biggest issue with those two is we're just going to see them as Frank and Charlie, and I want Mole Man to have at least a little bit of sinister about him. Not saying Danny DeVito can't do that, look at Penguin, but I also think it might come off a little bit too Penguin. How about Elijah Wood? Another Hall of Fame Hollywood weird little guy. The big question is, though, will he wear wigs? Another one of my favourite then Hollywood weird little guys. We have Jay Baruchel, we have the man from This Is The End, that documentary about Celtic, and How to Train Your Dragon. Another guy, I just think with his history and comedy, the script may lean into that a little bit too much, and like I said, I want my Mole Man to just be a little bit unsettling and a little bit more sinister. But if we want to go full time, full hog, all the way into weird little guy, why not go for the king of the weird little guys in Jack Black? I think Jack Black would be good at that. Would be really good at this. I think he turned a performance that would surprise a lot of people. I think everyone that I've mentioned so far would turn in a performance that would turn a lot of heads and surprise a lot of people. But none of them have made the cut so far. Because my Mole Man is Succession's own Kieran Culkin. From the clips I've seen from Succession, I've still to watch it, he's just makes me a little bit uncomfortable. There's a lot of the sinister. There's a big sinister undercurrent with a lot of the clips I've seen of him in that show. He's a good weird little guy, and personally, for me, I don't think you can have a better Mole Man than Kieran Culkin. Now let's talk about one of the weirder villains in the Fantastic Four's Rogues Gallery. Let's talk about the Puppet Master. First appearing back in Fantastic Four number 8, Philip Masters is also an original villain of the Fantastic Four dating back to the 60s. So, Philip Masters was raised in the country of Transia, I think. With a distant father and an alcoholic mother, he grew up making his own entertainment, moulding things out of clay, things he found at a nearby mountain. He went insane because maybe the mountain was magic, I think. And then he moved to America, his mother died, a load of things happened, he went full on insane and adopted the persona of the Puppet Master. What does he do? He controls radioactive clay, makes little clay models of people, and then uses those little clay models to control those people and make them fight each other. He's got big time beef with the Thing because the Thing is romantically entangled with Alicia Masters, his stepdaughter. He died, but then he wasn't dead. Then there's a time that Doom wrecked his shit, and now he can split himself into like 10 little mini guys, or he can become just a big clay dude. He's a jobber. He is a Fantastic Four jobber. He'd be fun for a little thing at the start of a movie, and I think there's some people that you could have a lot of fun with him. I think one of the big things here, one of the main things I'm looking for him is I don't want him to even appear to pose a physical threat. Once the clay is dealt with, I think it's such a gimmick that it wouldn't even need to take up a whole film, like I say, maybe 10 minutes at the start of a film. Once we get past the clay and he does not have the clay in his hands, he should be a pathetic little loser. Someone that cowers in fear at the Fantastic Four. So why not Jim Broadbent? Jim Broadbent does a little bit older. He definitely has that sort of quirky, weird little guy thing going for him. I think he can make a really interesting Puppet Master, but I think the thing with a Jim Broadbent, an actor like that for a role so small, I don't think so. Why not Jay Baruchel again? I think as good as he would be at Mole Man, I think he might be more interesting as a Puppet Master. Once again, I think with Jay Baruchel, he's an actor that I really like, So he's not an actor I would want to see given such a small role. I think he definitely doesn't. He's not going to look like he want to fight against Pedro Pascal. Maybe Joseph Quinn. Jay Baruchel would also be very good here. If we say we don't want the Puppet Master to look like he poses any physical threat to the Fantastic Four, why not go Peter Dinklage? I understand that might not be great given the optics of him being a dwarf, and if we want this guy to look like he can't put up a physical threat. But I think you can do something interesting with that if you want to make the Puppet Master a sort of bigger player. I think he's definitely too good an actor to play a role as small as the Puppet Master. I think he'd be much better served in a multitude of other roles, but I think you could definitely do something interesting with, let's be real, an absolute jobber. Now, this is my first runner-up for the Puppet Master, and to be honest, the person I think is the best suited for this. The reason he is my first runner-up is purely because I don't, once again, with the Puppet Master, I don't want to see an actor I like as much as Matthew Lillard be given such a small role where presumably he'll be in a film for 15 minutes as a threat and then come back every now and then. I don't like that, but I do think he could definitely do something very, very interesting with the character. And I'm so sorry to have to do this, but to me, the visual of Matt Lucas getting beat up by the Thing is too good to resist. So that is why, I'm sorry, I hate him as much as you do. That is why my Puppet Master is Matt Lucas. Now let's get off the jobber and back to some heavy hitters. Let's talk about Blastar. First appearing all the way back in Fantastic Four number 62, Blastar is a warlord who exists within the Negative Zone. Now the Negative Zone is such a big part of Fantastic Four comics. It's a universe that runs parallel to ours, except it's made up of antimatter, so unlike ours, it has already begun collapsing in on itself. It's where a lot of the Fantastic Four explorations go. It's very much tied to the Fantastic Four. I've seen a lot of people thinking it will probably just be twinned with the Quantum Realm, and they're the same thing. I understand why you don't want to introduce too many sort of Earth-adjacent realms, but the Negative Zone is so specific to the Fantastic Four. I think it's a massive wasted opportunity if you don't do it. The one-time king of the Bellurians, he was eventually ousted from his position of power and banished from the Negative Zone. He's been compared before to Doomsday as this big brute, but also he has the intellect, he has the ability and the smarts to take over worlds and universes. But on top of that, he hates everyone. He is not allied with other villains. Typically, he's the other biggest villain in the Negative Zone, who we'll get to very soon. Annihilus is also one of the sworn enemies of Blastar. For me, Blastar's going to be a role almost entirely CGI. Look at him, big monkey man. He's just a big, huge, hulking unit. And as good as it would be to get someone in like that, I think with his intellect and his ability to speak and how charismatic he is, this should be a voice role, and I'm fine with just having this entirely CGI on screen. So why not have a man like Jonathan Banks, already one of the most imposing voices in all of television, one of the scariest characters in all of TV, with Mike Ehrmantraut and the ability to switch on a dime? I think Jonathan Banks would be a good pick here, but once again I feel like he's an actor with such a high sort of value attached to his name. I don't necessarily see him being cast here purely because Blastar is not the main antagonist of the Negative Zone. But if we want an actor with a really cool voice who doesn't have as much weight behind his name as a Jonathan Banks, my Blastar, Prison Break's own Peter Stormare. I don't think we need to think too much into this. He's got a really cool, menacing voice, and it just kind of makes sense. He's got one of the coolest voices as well, and I think he makes a lot of sense as Blastar. So now let's talk about the Negative Zone's other big bad, Annihilus. He first appeared back in Fantastic Four Annual number 6, and his origin was explained then. Millennia ago, a race of aliens called, I can't remember their name, a race of aliens who are big, sort of cat dudes. Look at them here, big cat men. They were exploring the Negative Zone. They were like the prime species of the Negative Zone, and they had these seeding pods that they would fly all over the Negative Zone and create life on the planets in the Negative Zone. They found a planet called Arthos. Their seeding pod crashed. The big cat dudes that were on the planet died, but they did create life in Arthos, and eventually the Arthrosians were born, including Annihilus. Annihilus explored the planet one day, found the crashed ship of the Big Cat Men. I'm not going to look up their name now. I've committed to Big Cat Men or Big Cat Dudes. He explored the crashed ship of the Big Cat Dudes, went down, put on a purple helmet that granted him the entire wisdom of their species and the knowledge of their species, and he became super smart. And then a bunch of other shit like their life essence and pods and stuff he crafted into the cosmic control rod, which he then used to essentially enslave his entire race to become his army, also known as the Annihilation Wave. Annihilus is one of the biggest and heaviest hitters in all of Marvel, especially within the Fantastic Four, and he's the heaviest hitter we have yet to see on screen. It was also revealed back in 2019 in a Guardians of the Galaxy comic that Annihilus is the son of Oblivion. Oblivion is one of the sort of cosmic entities like Death and not Ego, all the ones at the end of Thor Love and Thunder. You know the ones, the Living Tribunal and Death and Oblivion and all that nonsense. So he's the son of one of those beings, which would then also make him the brother of Marge. Yeah. For me, Annihilus has to be incredibly seedy, incredibly make the viewer uncomfortable. If you listen to the way he's sort of speaks and the way he's always been portrayed in comics and cartoons, rather, and animated shows, he is always one of the smartest creatures in the room. He's the smartest creature of his entire species, and he knows that, and he's used that to manipulate and create a thing that can control his entire species to fight for him. We need someone pulling the strings, someone manipulative, someone who can just play this seedy alien warlord with a thirst for power perfectly. And once again, cool voice is a plus here. It's not a must the way it is with Blastar, and someone we'll get to later, but like a cool voice would be good here. So speaking of cool voice, why not Colonel Hans Landa himself? Why not Christoph Waltz? I think Christoph Waltz comes down to a lot of the other things that I've said about other actors here. Christoph Waltz is someone, not to say that Annihilus isn't going to be a big role. When they bring Annihilus in, Annihilus is going to be a major deal, but I think I'd rather see Christoph Waltz. I just think you could bring a lot more to a lot of different roles, but there are definitely worse people to pick for this role, and let's be honest, any role, than Christoph Waltz. So that is why my pick for Annihilus is Game of Thrones' Littlefinger, Aidan Gillen. Just cast your mind back to when people could say Game of Thrones and you wouldn't roll your eyes. Who was one of the best parts of that show? Littlefinger. When did that show start dipping in quality? After he fucking died. He's so good, and I think he's perfect for Annihilus. So now we're getting to the heavy hitters, aren't we? Let's talk about the Silver Surfer. Of course, as previously mentioned, Julia Garner has already been cast as Shalla Bal, but there are rumours and speculation going around that we are going to get Norrin Radd also. So Norrin Radd was a scientist on his home planet when one day the big hungry fucker Galactus showed up and said, I'm going to eat your fucking planet, brother. It's for cosmic balance. Fucking get ready to be scranned, fella. Norrin Radd cut a deal with Galactus, and in that deal spared his home planet, spared all his loved ones, but had to become a herald of Galactus. He scours the cosmos looking for planets suitable for Galactus to swallow and eat to obtain cosmic balance. Sometimes he's an outright bad guy, sometimes he can be softened down, sometimes he becomes an ally of the Fantastic Four, sometimes he's an outright good guy. I think we need someone who can sort of play all ends of that spectrum, and on top of that, you know, I wasn't mad when they cast Julia Garner. One of my picks for the Silver Surfer here is a woman, and I've had her in this list since before Julia Garner was announced. And to be honest, we need someone who can just sort of pull off that otherworldly, sort of floaty, ethereal, androgynous feel, I guess. It's a big fucking silver dude. There are definitely other people who could play it, and it definitely feel more gendered. And that's why I've picked someone who plays it, who probably would play it a little bit more gendered. But the sort of weird, floaty, ethereal feel is something that is huge to this character. And if we didn't get the announcement of Shalla Bal, I think I would have picked one of my runners-up. So let's get into them. One of the shouts I see all the time on Twitter is Lakeith Stanfield. And I think you just have to look at his body of work to understand that he's a weird little guy. He has this sort of weird energy where you can't take your eyes off him. He kind of, especially in shows like Atlanta, there's times he appears to almost float across the room. I think as well, if you look at him in Get Out, when he's the white man, when he's being the white man before he gets the photo taken of him, you see a little bit of this sort of unsettling nature to him. He's very good at playing that, but for me, Lakeith Stanfield's one of my favourite actors in the world, and he is an actor who I have cast in a much bigger role for something else, so I will refuse to cast him anywhere else. And I don't think he should play the Silver Surfer. What about Bill Skarsgård, one of Hollywood's tall weirdos? That's kind of what you're looking for, tall, skinny weirdos. I think Skarsgård would be a really good pick here. Probably someone I can see them casting, but he isn't my top pick. as previously mentioned, I have absolutely no problem with a genderless Silver Surfer or a gender-swapped Silver Surfer, because who the fuck cares? It's a weird, ethereal silver being, and I personally think Anya Taylor-Joy would have been an incredible pick for the Silver Surfer. I also do think Julia Garner is an incredible pick for the Silver Surfer. I don't think we'll see Anya Taylor-Joy now as a Silver Surfer because of the casting of Julia Garner, but Anya Taylor-Joy would have been a really interesting and really fun pick for this role. But my pick, Darth Vader himself, Hayden Christensen. I can't really explain it. I haven't watched many things where he sort of gives this Silver Surfer energy on screen, but when I watch him at interviews, the way he just kind of like floats down the red carpet and he's just a weird sort of tall, skinny guy, I see Hayden Christensen as the Silver Surfer less for what I've seen him do on screen. I just think Hayden Christensen would be an incredible and very interesting way to take the Silver Surfer, especially paired next to a Julia Garner. For me, he is not my top pick. My top pick has always been Anya Taylor-Joy. But with the casting of Julia Garner, as previously mentioned, I don't think we will see two female Silver Surfers because of woke. We're already seeing one because of woke and not because Shalla Bal is a long-standing comic book character. So for me, the next best pick is Hayden Christensen. So let's talk about him. Yes, him. Not the fart cloud. Not the only other version we've seen on screen being a big fart cloud. Let's talk about Galactus. The Galactus to me is someone who in the comics I think is a much more interesting foe. And he's not someone I'm entirely convinced can be as imposing on the big screen. Because at the end of the day, he shows up, I'm going to eat the planet. Okay, that's it, done. He can't really, people talk about him being a saga villain and spread out across, multiple films. And I just don't think on screen he can be. I could be proven wrong, obviously. There's a lot of talk of him coming in. I think Banderas is the rumour for to play him. I don't think he can be made incredibly interesting in live action, spread out over a few films. I'd be happy to be proven wrong, but he's just not someone I think can be that. But enough of me complaining about one of the most iconic characters in the Fantastic Four's Rogues Gallery. What are my criteria for Galactus? Cool voice. And someone who can have this big, larger-than-life presence. Someone who can feel like a threat. The big, booming voice is a must purely because he's the size of about 47 million fucking skyscrapers. But someone who needs to feel like a threat with what will probably be mostly a voice role. Let's start the runners-up off with Michael Shannon. I think Michael Shannon could be incredibly interesting here. Once again, though, with a lot of these actors, I think their talents are wasted to what will probably realistically be a one-movie thing. I think that's why I've pushed cool voice over most things here, because Galactus is probably going to show up in one or two movies, and they won't be consecutive. I think Michael Shannon's talents would be wasted there, and I think we can do a lot better for Galactus. And we can also do a lot better for Michael Shannon. What about Cranston? What if we give Zordon and Hal and Heisenberg a chance at the real... Well, he was Hal, and he was Zordon, so he's seen the big time. What if we get Cranston in? I think Cranston could be a lot of fun here. Got a cool voice, got a sort of imposing voice, and always has, as Zordon, as Hal, and as Heisenberg. He's used his voice to be imposing in completely different ways. And I know I'm talking about Hal and Malcolm in the Middle here, but that's genuinely one of the best shows of all time. I think he could be a lot of fun, and as mentioned, he's used his voice in imposing and intimidating ways in three completely different contexts with three completely different styles. I think he could be a lot of fun as Galactus. What about Benicio del Toro? I've seen a lot of talk about Antonio Banderas being cast as Galactus, and I like that, but to be honest, I like Benicio del Toro a little bit more. I think he offers a lot of the same things, that sort of suave energy and that cool energy that Antonio Banderas can, but there's a sort of a sinister nature to him. We've seen that in a lot of his roles. I really like Benicio del Toro for Galactus, but he's not my number one pick. We've still got a way to go before we see him. Someone I added to this list very recently after watching Dune 2 in the cinema. What about Javier Bardem as well? I think Bardem could be a lot of fun here. I think for a lot of the same reasons I mentioned for Del Toro, but I still think we can do better, guys. What about Pissy Boy himself, Liam Neeson, another one of Hollywood's most iconic voices? And you think of his most iconic thing in Taken with, the whole spiel and the whole line. He could be a lot of fun here. once again, I just think an actor like Liam Neeson, we need something bigger. And I understand a lot of people want Galactus to be a saga villain and a multi-film arc, but as I mentioned, I just don't see it, and that's why every actor I've said so far hasn't made the top of my list. Now we have who was my number one pick up until his unfortunate passing recently. Andre Braugher, famous for Brooklyn Nine-Nine, would have been my Galactus. Truthfully, I think he could have put an incredible performance here. He has the booming, imposing voice, and unfortunately, his passing has meant he won't be Galactus. Unfortunately, his passing has meant a lot of things, unfortunately, as he was one of my favourite working actors. Very sad that we lost a legend like Andre Braugher. For me, he was my original pick for Galactus. So then, my pick for Galactus is the one and only Keith David. I think he's someone who offers a lot of the other things that every other actor on this list has mentioned. He probably has the coolest voice out of everyone I've mentioned, and with the way that I see this going, it's probably going to be a 1 or 2 film thing. You don't want to commit an actor of the prestige of a Liam Neeson down to a couple of voice roles. Not saying that Keith David is not an incredible actor, he absolutely is, but given what we'll probably get out of Galactus in live action, I think Keith David is the perfect choice. So now, let's talk about the big boy. Let's talk about Doctor Doom, the real saga villain, the real villain who can probably carry multiple sagas. He is that interesting, and there is that much of a runway. Let's check out his origin first before we then start talking about actors. Victor Von Doom was born in the European country of Latveria to a Romani gypsy community. His mother practiced the dark arts and practiced magic. As he grew up, he also began practicing magic. But on top of that, was an absolute genius. He used his magic and his science. When he eventually came to the US, together in a recent sort of run on the Doom comics, he created a machine with magic and science to visit his mother in hell, and that became the accident that scarred him for life. In other times, the lab experiment gone wrong. Once he moved to America, he was sometimes roommate, sometimes not, always academic rivals with his fellow university student, Pedro Pascal. So we've got to keep someone in that sort of age range as Pascal for my Doom. We need someone who is regal because he goes on to lead Latveria. We need someone who is larger than life. We need someone who is sinister. We need someone who we can believe is the smartest man in the room, alongside Pedro Pascal, who will be playing Reed, who we also have to believe is the smartest man in the room. In Secret Wars in the comics, he kills the Beyonders and takes their powers to become God Emperor Doom. We need someone we can look at and say, that's the fucking God Emperor. So, that's what I'm looking for. I need someone regal, imposing, larger than life, and just someone you can't take your eyes off. Now, before I get into my runners-up and my eventual pick, I do want to say I am a massive advocate for equity within the comic book space, especially within the comic book movie space. I think it is massively important that we see the representation of these actors. Now, we have to look at the way that certain Roma characters have been portrayed by a white ginger woman. Love you, Elizabeth Olsen, but that's not great. And I understand I'm now about to cast a white man as Doom after talking about his Romani heritage being such an important part of the character. I do. I really do. But out of the sort of Roma and Romani actors that I have looked at and sort of watched bits of and watched shows and movies that they are in, none of them are scream Doom to me. And I think with someone who is going to be the face of Marvel villains going forward, we need someone who can be the face. So unfortunately here, I'm going to turn my back on that part of his heritage. Not turn my back on it, but I'm not going to cast an Eastern European or a Roma actor here. And I'm sorry. But for every other casting of other characters, my Nightwing, I have a Roma cast. For obviously my Magneto, I obviously have a Jewish casting. I also mentioned at the start of this video how important I think it is that Eben Moss Backrack played the Thing, with him being the sort of avatar for Jack Kirby within the Marvel Universe. And I do feel gross that I'm not casting a Roma actor here for Doom, but I genuinely couldn't find one that screamed Doom to me. So why not Daniel Craig? I think Daniel Craig would be a lot of fun here. He's someone who can be that sort of imposing and villainous threat, but someone who also has the charm to pull off Doom For me, he's a little bit older than Pedro Pascal, and he fucking hates franchises. He only got out of bed to make that 5th Bond movie for wads of cash. I don't think he's going to commit himself down to another super serious franchise anytime soon. He wants to make his silly Foghorn Leghorn detective movies, and let's let him keep making them till the end of time. Rami Malek is someone that I didn't really think about much, but the more I started thinking about No Time to Die, I see sort of echoes of Doom in and around that character. The biggest issue for me here is he's not physical enough. He's not imposing enough. I also think Doom should be able to win a fist fight. Doom should be imposing. He might be this genius and he might be this sorcerer, but he could also just bait your head in, and I don't believe Rami Malek is winning a fight against many other people cast in Marvel. Sorry, Rami. I love you. Another name that's been thrown around for Doom for a considerable amount of time is Viggo Mortensen. I think he has all the hallmarks of Doom, except he is way older than our Reed Richards. So for that reason, Viggo, you're out. He's 65. Viggo's out. Sorry. What about Luke Evans? He's around the right age. He's a very physical actor. He's been in a lot of physical roles. I think he was in Fast 7, where he's throwing hands with... was Jason Statham there at that point? He was in a Fast movie, I'm pretty sure, throwing hands. He's a big physical actor. He's a very charismatic actor as well. Around about the right age, there is just someone who beats him for me. I think Luke Evans has all the right markers here, and I wouldn't be mad if Luke Evans was cast, definitely. Someone previously mentioned in this video, what about Christoph Waltz? Honestly, what about Christoph Waltz? The only thing keeping Christoph Waltz back from being the absolute perfect Doctor Doom is that he is once again older than our Reed, and they need to have been contemporaries and one-time friends in university. I think when the announcement of the Disney-Fox merger in late 2017 and the completion of it in early 2019 was finally announced, and we realised we were getting the Fantastic Four in the MCU, there was one beautiful, glorious Danish man who was on Game of Thrones every week, who made us all think about Doom. And that's Nikolai Coster-Waldau. My original first pick for Doom. Unfortunately, he's aged out. He's in his mid-50s right now. Pedro Pascal, I think, is 38. We need someone in the Pedro Pascal range. So it's an obvious answer. Let's not think too much about it. Cillian Murphy is the perfect Doctor Doom. If you've watched Oppenheimer, you know he can easily play the smartest man in the room. He is imposing. Obviously in Oppenheimer he was a lot thinner. He's not someone who is a small, slight actor a lot of the time. We've seen what he can do in Peaky Blinders as well, in that imposing role. We've seen him as Scarecrow in this physically and mentally imposing character. And when the accident happens and all we can see of Doctor Doom, and the only way for him to emote is just through his eyes, is there a man with fucking more striking eyes in Hollywood than Cillian Murphy? So that is why my Doctor Doom is Cillian Murphy. And that is it for the first video here on Jake Talks Capes, where I have cast all of the best and most weird and one-jobber Fantastic Four villain in this here video. Let me know what you guys think. We will be talking a lot about comics and other things like that, and movies on this channel as this channel continues to grow. Share this around with all your friends. Let them know. If they like the Fantastic Four, bring them on over here. If they're like Pedro Pascal's cool, I wonder who's going to be Doctor Doom. Be like, I know a handsome man who's got some ideas. Definitely comment down below. Let me know who you would want to play all of these different roles. Comment down below and let me know of Roma actors who could possibly play Doctor Doom that I may have just missed, because that's an area I'm really interested in educating myself on, because I do feel gross about casting a white Irish man as Doom a little bit. Anyway guys, thanks so much for watching. Like, share, subscribe, all the usual YouTube nonsense, and I will see you soon to talk about capes.